provided at the start of the process. And none of these desired ways of delivering services are really new. They are reflected in the way we already work, the way that we all want to be delivering services for our users. So if you need a little bit more convincing on this, back in 2018, we launched the Local Digital Declaration. It was co-written by local governments, central government and industry bodies, and so far has been signed by more than 230 councils. The declaration itself, it speaks about things like technology being an enabler, not a blocker, or even fixing your plumbing to break the dependency on inflexible and expensive technology that usually just doesn't even join up effectively. And as you heard, these principles are echoed in the planning paper as well. And whilst most of us agree that this is the right way to delivering our services, we know that this is a huge issue for many across local government. And it's not something that any one individual authority or even central government can fix alone. And that's why we have the declaration, we have the white paper, the local digital community, and the local digital funds. And all of these things enable us to fund projects that meet those objectives, those aspirations. So the two funded projects that you're about to hear from, they sit in the middle of the planning process, meaning that they can have the greatest impact if we get it right. So the RIPA project, or Reducing Invalid Planning Applications project, it focuses on the front-facing, on the application side, ensuring that users are given the best chance to submit a valid application with all the necessary information, correct fee, etc., etc. Whilst BOPS project, or Back Office Planning System project, it handles the back office side, ensuring that staff are given the best tools to process income applications sufficiently. You might see a little orange triangle at the top, so that is actually the third project that we recently funded called Digital Place-Based Engagement, and they will be looking at the consultation side. So these projects, well, we've been funding them for quite a long time, so since the end of 2018, and we are now really close to being able to start offering the new service to our users and staff. So first, we're focusing on improving the process for lawful development certificates. Hopefully next will come full household applications, and then followed by minor developments. But enough from me. I'll now hand off to Catherine and Toby from Reducing Invalid Planning Applications project to tell you more about this.
Thanks, Egle. Yeah, so it's RIPA, as Egle said for short, a service pattern for digital planning submissions. You can see on that slide there's our project website, ripa.digital, and various blog and Twitter information, and our digital planning at lambeth.gov.uk email address. So please do check out our website if you want to know more, or drop us an email if you're interested in getting involved in doing any user testing, for instance. So that collaborating with Lambeth are 5 other councils. On to the next slide, Toby. And that's Buckinghamshire, Camden, Lewisham, Northumberland and Southwark. And we're working with Open Systems Lab, our developers, and HOLAM, our independent user researcher. And in the spirit of collaboration, it really has been a fully engaging collaborative project. We're going to hear from several different members of the team today, from both Lambeth and the Camden team. So what is the problem? Well, at the moment, the planning system is really confusing for most applicants. For the average person who wants to make alterations or build, say, an extension to their property, it can be like finding themselves in a maze, having to visit a myriad of different websites and read through sometimes difficult to understand guidance on what needs to be submitted for their application to be made valid. So in planning, this first stage is called validation. Invalid applications are a massive drain on resources, and sometimes a lot of applications go around the system multiple times. And as councils only receive one fee from validation through to determination, this means that fee is being eaten up during an applicant's attempt to get it right for validation before it can even begin to be determined by a planning officer. Even a professional agent can find it difficult because, as well as national legislation and requirements, every planning authority has its own unique set of local requirements. So that just confuses things further. Our research has shown, on average across the country, of all householder applications that have been submitted, 50% of them are invalid at the point of submission. And sometimes it can be really silly things, like they've forgotten to include a form, or they've paid the incorrect fee. And as fees are set nationally, this is something that could really be easily designed out. So the people who are going to benefit from this, well, we've got a wide range of users and stakeholders, from businesses and residents and builders to planning authorities and customer service centres. Now I'm going to hand over to Richard Limbrick from Camden, who's going to talk a little bit about our approach on the project.
Thanks, Catherine. So the project's going to shift from asking for documents for planning applications to asking for data. And what that does is it allows us to pass those bits of data through dynamic forms with branching questions, so that we only ask questions dependent on the previous questions, the answers to the previous questions. And that means we can then take those bits of data and pass them on to a back office system. A big exercise in this has been reverse engineering all of the documents that we asked for in a planning system and breaking them down into those discrete bits of this list, which you can see a part of here, of all the data that's used in a household planning application. The other principles that we're getting from this project mean that we're trying to design out, or at least reduce, the chance of applicants submitting an invalid planning application by taking them through that submission stage, bit by bit, stage by stage. It also means we can streamline the process, so we don't ask them for information we've already got. For example, we can use GIS data to see if they're in a conservation area rather than expecting them to know whether or not they are. The ways we've been working on this project, as much as possible using agile principles, we've been adapting and iterating throughout fortnightly sprints. We've been having show and tells, and we're collaborating across all the partners who are really central to the project. And we've also held a number of stakeholder sessions with separate councils, and generally worked in the open as well. The other thing is we've realised the value of user testing. I'm just going to hand over to Catherine to talk a little bit more about that.
Well, we become firm user testing advocates, and we've learnt that a lot of our assumptions about what would help the users were actually completely wrong and didn't help at all, and testing revealed that information. We've tested iterations of the design with members of the project observing and taking notes, so that we can really ensure that what we're developing actually will help applicants and actually reduce genuinely invalid applications that are submitted. So now I'm going to hand over to Chris to take us through some of our findings.
Thank you, Catherine. Yes, so I'm going to take you through some of our key findings from the project. So one big thing that we've learned is that digital planning will be easier if planning policy is written differently. So a lot of planning is quite subjective, and if we want a digital planning system, then we found that we may need to move towards a more transparent and rules-based set of future policies. We found a number of unintended consequences to our work, but we've also found additional benefits, particularly here the faster processing of planning applications. And I'm sure for anyone who works in local government, you can vouch this could massively help to save both time and money for councils. Now on to some of our findings from the design of our online tool. So we found that some documents are less in scope, but that others are in fact more in scope than we first thought. I particularly like to highlight drawings submitted with planning applications. So we've learned that it should be possible to reduce or even eliminate invalidations altogether that result from missing drawings in the application process. One final thing to mention here is the importance of the My Applications dashboard on our online tool, and Toby will show us a bit more about that later in the demo. We found that it's really crucial to allowing users to follow the progress of their application, and the dashboard helps users to communicate more effectively with officers. Finally, some findings from our user research. So we've encountered a number of obstacles from information governance teams, but overcoming these interpretations of GDPR has really enriched our project. One crucial thing here is the importance of testing early and testing often, as Catherine mentioned earlier. It's also helped to ask users about their expectations of the service we're building, so that we can develop our online platform around what people actually want and need. Now, I'm just going to give a brief overview of the way that we built our online tool around the overall aim, of course, of reducing the number of invalid planning applications. Throughout from beta, we've collected and compared partners' local validation lists to form a picture of all the documents we use in planning. We've focused on when these documents are needed in the application process, and we've labelled these trigger points. Now, Catherine mentioned earlier variation in the local validation rules set by planning authorities, and comparing these lists has helped us to see the better, different approaches taken by partners. It's also highlighted ambiguities and validation rules that we think need to be challenged. So on the screen here, you can see an image from our spreadsheet comparing these rules across the partners. From this, we've looked for opportunities to adopt common approaches and ways of using GIS data and information provided by applicants to define these requirements. Now, once we had all of this information, we were then able to effectively translate these validation rules into flows. And you can see the flows here on the left of your screen. So these flows act as a sort of coding, and they form the questions asked to applicants when submitting their planning application. On the right there, you can see the applicant's view. Where we haven't been able to align our validation requirements between partners, we've programmed the system so that each council has their own sets of flows. And this allows us to really recognise their own planning policy and contexts. Perfect. That's all from me.
So on to our partners focus for beta. We're going to be running more surveys, reviewing the metrics we captured in alpha and updating these, and as well as running lots more user testing on iterations of the design as we go. We've also been working much more closely with our sister project, the Southwark-led back office planning system, and the two projects in beta are aligning much more closely, and we're also beginning to link with the Camden-led project, Inclusive Engagement. In planning, there are different types of planning applications depending on what an applicant wants to do. The two projects are currently focusing, as Egle mentioned, on developing a private beta by December this year for lawful development certificates. So this will take the application from submission with the RIPA tool to get it validated all the way through smoothly through the BOPS project tool. So that's really exciting. And then we're aiming for a householder private beta by March 2021. So, and then expanding on into all the other types of application types that exist. So really exciting stuff ahead as we transform and bring the planning system into the 21st century. So now I'm going to hand you over to Toby, who's going to take a bit of take us through a demo of the prototype so far.
Thank you, Catherine. Just give me a second while I bring up the demo. Okay. Okay, can you see that okay?
Yes.
Okay. So this is our demo. I should say this is a clickable mock-up of the system, and it's just one that we're using for our user testing. So it's not a fully working system as yet. We're just using it to demonstrate some of the proposed features of the system and the design choices that we've made. One of the things our users have told us is that before they start, they want to actually know what they're going to need during the process. So you'll see here we've given a little bit of description of some of those things that so they can be prepared for making their application. So making a start. You'll see as I go through this demo, will just click on these fields and the data will magically appear. So we'll see it will be a little bit slower in real life, but there we go. So signing in. And this is the My Applications dashboard that we were talking about earlier. You can see that this our fictional user, Aisha, here has submitted a couple of applications already. And today we're going to just run through some of the steps that will be required to submit a new application. So you can see here, nice big button, just click on the Start New Application. Now this is the sort of your application page. As you can see, there's quite a lot here. Some of our users have told us this is a little bit daunting, and we understand that, and I think we're looking at what options we've got there. One of the things that I will say though is that because this is using dynamic forms, as people answer questions here, some of these things may drop away. So today I'm just going to start here at the top, application summary. We'll have a postcode finder and selecting addresses. What's the next? Now this is a sort of application and sort of property summary. Here you can see one of the interesting features of this new system is it links to GIS layers, and that means through maps, as you see at the top there. But even more importantly, we can bring through these constraints down here. So this one shows the conservation area, the buildings listed, not in the conservation area, and it shows various information there. Further down the page here, you can see that another sort of innovation here is that we're looking to have drawing the site boundary map directly into the system. And like that, magically. There's also an option to upload an old-fashioned traditional map if that's what you prefer. So I'm just going to select what we're doing today. And there we go. Put a bit of a text in. And so coming back to this page, you'll now see that that section shows completed. I'm going to run through another thing here on the design. So on design here, one of the things our user testing has told us here is that sometimes people might require a bit more information about these kind of things. For example, the materials here. So if I click on here and bricks, we've got various types of brick, including stock brick here. Quite a few people didn't know what stock bricks are, so that's been a little difficult at times, but and then cinder blocks they didn't know at all. So we were thinking probably going to go with something like descriptions or a bit of photographs or something there. So scrolling down the page, you can see these are pre-filled. Fill that one, onto the next. And that field is now completed. The real system won't have this big orange button here, but I'm going to use this to try and hurry up the demo. And there we go, all magically complete now. So moving on, after you're ready, all that stuff's prepared and ready, we give the user a chance to review their application. This is something that they've said that they want. And here we go, all those fields are now available, and they can have the opportunity to make some last-minute tweaks should they require before confirming that they're happy with the application and continuing. And then there's a couple of declarations to make, and I'll just click into that, and there, and then continue for the payments. Here on the payment screen, you can see nice and clear here, the fee, standard household planning application fee for this type of application. And we have some payment options down here. I'll probably be using gov.pay initially for this. And you see, to fill in the details here. Running through, continue. Payment summary, just the details, just like you'd get on most websites before you commit to pay and submitting. Right, and your application has been submitted. Here you can see provide a reference number and some details of what will happen next, the little stages of the planning application process, and some reasons why we might contact you. You'll see here as well that there is the option to, oh, it seems to have disappeared on this one, but we can now potentially go back and look at your application here, and also returning to the dashboard. Here you can see that the new application now appears there and appears as submitted in your application dashboard here. Okay,
Great.
Thank you. That's it for the demo.
Thanks, Toby. So now we're passing over to Tom from Southwark, who's going to take us through the back office planning system demonstration. So over to you, Tom.
Thank you, Catherine. I'm just going to be sharing my screen. Just 1 second. And is this one? Can everyone see the screen? I'll take that.
I think
yes.
It's loading. Yeah.
Thank you, Catherine. That's great. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry, good morning still, actually. Apologies. My name's Tom Buttrick. I'm a planning team leader at Southwark Council here in central London. We have been working with partner organisations on a back office planning system, which for those of you out in the audience who aren't planning officers, this is the system that we actually use to determine the planning application. So we've just seen from the RIPA project an application for a certificate of lawfulness being submitted. What I'll be running through now is actually what happens next. Okay. Firstly, I mean, just to reiterate, we've also been working with MHCLG on this, partner organisations, and we've been working on this since 2018. And we'll be presenting an MVP, a minimal viable product of where we've got to date. So, why did we do this? Where did we start? So the idea of this project, this digital project, was to create a user-centered back office planning system, which basically looks at the user experience of using a software application for determining planning applications. And we obviously we're using existing systems already, but we recognise that it's important that we look to innovate and improve the experience for our officers, and ultimately that would feed into an improved experience for applicants. So we've been working with Unboxed, who are our digital supplier, and other boroughs to actually produce this new back office system. And as Catherine touched on, there's lots of different planning applications out there, as we all know, depending on what the type of development that you wish to proceed with. But to start with, we have focused on permitted development applications, our simpler applications. And the reason why we chose this is, one, it kind of sets the foundations for the system. It's a more straightforward type of application to proceed with. It links well within the RIPA project, as we've just seen. And now that the RIPA project is also looking at permitted development applications, there's a real consistency with approaches, and that enables us to align both projects. So we're actually looking at, as Egle said, those two core components within the planning system, which will determine a submitted application. And for those who are planning officers, as we know, a permitted development application it's a technical assessment. It doesn't require public consultation or a site visit out on site for an officer to make an assessment. So it's actually quite light in terms of actual time to determine the planning application. But I think, as Egle touched on, there are, with the white paper, there are changes afoot within the permitted development legislation, and obviously we're keeping a keen eye on that to ensure that the product evolves with that. Permitted development applications are about changes to your house. In this instance, we're looking at household and permitted development. Here we go. Here's some lovely single and two-story extensions. So this is what this is about. This is about us as a planning service ensuring that you get your consent. You get your consent to build your extensions, so you can continue to live a happy and joyful life in your extended house. That's what we want to do with a planning system. We want to get you that consent as quickly as possible, so you can build as quickly as possible. The RIPA project, as we've seen, is all about reducing that invalid application opportunity in the first instance. And then, so once we've got your valid application, we're going to be plugging it into this system we're about to show, and we can hopefully we aim to get your decision as quickly as possible. Just to confirm again, this is a software product, as we know. Who are the users of the product? Primarily, it is a back office system, so it's going to be planning officers who determine it. It's then going to also be a planning manager, the manager who signs off the decision to give consent to the proposal. But ultimately, I think we also have to take a step back here. Actually, our applicants, the people of Southwark or other boroughs who want to extend their house. And if we can give them a better service, a quicker service, as I said, we can start building quicker, and that's one of our key ambitions, one of the key deliverables. But why would we develop this piece of software? Obviously, planning departments use existing software already. But what we're keen in Southwark, but obviously with our partner boroughs and obviously for MCHLG, is that we recognise that some existing planning systems are slow. They're designed for multiple purposes. They can be unintuitive. They can rely on manual workarounds. They're locked to the desktop. They lock in data, so therefore we need to ensure, we're keen to ensure that data can be moved through different databases for different purposes, for monitoring, etc. And as I said, we're keen on innovation here. So we recognise that this is this issue is a key part of improving our service, and as it increasingly becomes a more of a digital service. So we've moved away from plans and drawings and paper copies. And we've got to obviously PDFs, but where do we go from there? And that's kind of the trajectory we're on. So going back to permitted development, and this is the MVP for permitted development applications. As permitted development is rules-based, for those who know their planning legislation, the application has to accord with certain parameters, and if it does, it's granted. And the BOPS MVP speeds up that decision-making process. It reduces the kind of the data that an officer needs to see, and then really focuses on pretty much just whipping through it and getting a decision out as quickly as possible. Now, traditionally, well, not traditionally, by legislation, a council can allow 8 weeks to determine an application. But we have an aim in Southwark, which is an aim of making a decision in 24 hours once a valid certificate of lawfulness householder application is submitted. Now, that's our ambition. And obviously, where we are at the moment is we have a tool, which I'm about to show you, to go through further testing. We need to test with the RIPA project as well. But to hold that ambition in mind is key to us. And come December, when we hopefully start public beta testing, we can start to action this ambition. So one thing I also wanted to touch on was again, why would we do this when we have existing software? And I think it's important to note that this is about speeding up administration time, as is the RIPA project, but also it's about actually saving money. And we recognise that that actually determining planning applications for a local planning authority costs money. It costs the council money. So we're looking at ways to actually not only improve our service and the speed and the quality of our decision making, but also looking for ways to actually make savings. So that's an important part of this process to recognise as well. So the permitted development MVP that we're about to show, I'm just going to run through one side of it. There's two main sides. There's the planning officer side, and then there's the planning manager side. And I think it's important to note that that's the two key components of the tool. But also it does a few other things, and I've listed them here on this bullet point. And it's around it's a data-driven process. Again, like the RIPA project, we're trying to move away from PDFs to be data first. We're looking at Gov UK Notify to email decision notices directly to the applicant. And we're looking at APIs, so the widgets that make databases talk, so we can ensure that data can be transferred to other tools for monitoring and etc. And I think as Catherine touched on, we're looking at permitted development rights here, but our ambition is to go to householder applications next, then to minor, and on to other planning applications beyond that. So the important thing here is ensuring that whatever the minimal viable product does at this stage is scalable, and we can learn and we can build on this. And that's key to actually developing the project further. So I'm just going to launch into now a demonstration of the minimal viable product for this tool. And I'm just going to just jump straight in. So for those of you who haven't worked in a planning office before, this is what it looks like, I guess, in the future. Here we are. We've logged in. We have a list of applications, certificate of lawfulness applications that an officer would look at, and we can see here that these are the ones in assessment. There's some already awaiting determination. As we can see, there's one ready to be ticked off or consented by the manager. If the manager has issues, they can go back to the officer and require corrections. And here's one we determined earlier. So I'm just going to go through to assess one of these here. And as we know, this is in the lovely borough of Southwark. And I'm going to click on. So here we have the application. We can see the application information, just the key information. We have highlighted installation of a new external insulated render. So that's the application type. We can see it's in a conservation area. The permitted development rights are active, which means they can do this. It's residential. We can go down and see the uploaded documents that we have imported from or drawn down from the RIPA tool. So, for example, we can see there's one of the plans coming in, and there we go, some lovely render. We can also, just minimizing that, we can see the application dates. As we know, there's only one more day to determine this, so the officer would have to prioritize this. Contact information for the applicant and consultation. As we know, permitted development applications don't need consultation, but future householder ones will do. So details and now of the application, and now the officer can go in and assess. And again, as it's rules based, there's which is set out in regulations, we can see, we can make an assessment of the application, how the development relates to the regulations, and we can say, yes, it has been met. I won't do everything just so because I'm conscious of time. So we save that. We then, we've done the proposal, apologies, 1 second. We then jump on to the drawing numbers and we can confirm that this is drawing number 1. I'll just save that for the time being. And sorry, we need to do all the drawing numbers. And now, as the planning officer, we are submitting it to our manager for recommendation. And there's the recommendation. It almost looks like a decision notice already. The recommendation is granted, various conditions, etc. I mean, obviously, this is just a mock-up, and we then submit it to the manager, and that's it done. So, from what is previously a process which the officer has to write a report, they have to obviously make their assessment. This simplifies the process, and it speeds up the process. So that is an example of the planning officer side. The manager would then, it would appear in their stream, and then they would sign it off or not. So that's a demonstration of the MVP for permitted development householder applications. So just jumping back to the presentation here. In the slide here, we can see that if you would like to have a go at the application, there's the website, there's the passwords, please feel free to. And as I've touched on already, and actually what Catherine touched on, for our next steps of this tool, we're aligning with the Reducing Invalid Planning Applications product. So we can do end-to-end user testing. We are going to be doing private beta testing using historic certificate application data, and then move on to live data. And we will be doing further phases of development for householder planning applications. And the next phase of development of this tool should start very shortly. And so we're going to be doing show and tells fortnightly around the development of the product with our partner organizations and with Unboxed, our supplier. So there we go. That is an introduction to the back office planning system known as BOPS. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. And here on the screen, you should be able to see contact details for both of the projects. Oh, not anymore. Maybe we can put them in the chat. Both of the projects have their websites. Oh, here we go. So you can see RIPA.digital or BOPS.digital, very easy to access. You can follow both of the projects as well on Twitter, on Medium as well. They're posting regular blog posts, updating people on the progress. And both projects as well, they have email addresses that, you know, if you have any questions at any point in the future, you can drop us a line, and, you know, we'll be more than happy to talk to you about, you know, any questions you might have, or how you can follow the project or get involved as well. So Sarah, are there any questions in the chat, or is there anything that anyone would like to ask now? I think we're now ready to move to the Q&A part of the session.
Yeah, I think the questions that are already in there, Egle, we've answered as we've gone through. People are asking for more details about the RIPA project, which I think you've posted the links for. There is a question from Neil Lawrence, our web manager, actually, whether the main planning system suppliers are engaged in this project. I know our suppliers watching it very carefully.
Yes, it's a very good question. So as you know, the projects, they are working in the open. So it's very easy for suppliers to follow the projects, learn from them. If they want to get in touch, they can contact us as well. We do have an engagement strategy that, it is coming. So we do want to do a bit more like strategic engagement with the supplier community as well, to make sure that what we are building meets their needs, and to also understand how they can be reusing maybe some of the learnings, because we're not looking to become the next supplier in local government. We want suppliers to pick up what is being built to improve their existing products as well, and at the same time, each of the partner local authorities, they have been talking to a certain extent with their existing suppliers. So yeah, I think in a nutshell, more strategic engagement with suppliers is coming. But if anyone wants to talk to us, it's very easy to follow our work or get in touch.
Definitely, I'd agree with that. That's where we found you. Maxine Brown has posted a question. Maxine, would you like to ask your question?
Hello, can you hear me?
We can, yes.
Oh, good. Okay,
Yeah.
I thought I'd just go to try. Really impressive stuff. Really fantastic work. I'm working as the head of digital at London Borough of Barking and Dagenham, and had been working with our planning arm, which is actually an arm's length company, on all of this. So really interested to ask how much funding was allocated to each of the projects as the first question, and then I've got a follow-up.
Yeah, no problem at all. So everything, you can definitely find it at localdigital.gov.uk. We have all the information, including funding, posted. But just to give you a bit of an overview, so earlier on, I think I showed the timeline of the funding. So the BOPS back office system project has been funded from discovery to beta. So discoveries we give up to 80k, alphas we give up to 100,000, and betas up to 350. So they've been awarding that entire sum of money.
Got it.
Sorry?
Oh, no. Yeah,
No,
got that
okay.
one. That's good. Good.
Whilst for the RIPA projects, we started funding them at alpha, so we gave them £100,000 for alpha and 350 for beta, so 450 altogether. So, but yeah, it's all in the open. We're not hiding any kind of funding or money, and that's typical for what we give to all of our funded projects as well, as part of the local digital fund rounds of funding.
Fantastic. And then my follow-up question was, were any off-the-shelf systems like Tascomi considered before deciding on development, and what was the rationale around yes, no, maybe so?
Yeah, so we did do a bit of market research, but the way that our projects are funded, we instead of going and looking at systems and deciding what is the problem, we actually make a call out to local government saying, come to us and tell us what the problems are and maybe how you want to solve these. So planning was obviously one of the areas that we've been following very closely, because throughout our engagement with local governments, loads of councils kept coming to us saying, do you know what, can you fix planning, or can you help us fix planning, more like that. As part of the application process, obviously our projects did put in evidence saying that currently there's nothing on the market that fully meets user needs and council needs, and there is a genuine need for actually having these two projects, and actually many more projects that should help to kind of like put down this kind of like building blocks for improving the planning system end to end. So we did look at other planning systems. We did engage with a little bit with the private sector. We did do our before we funded the projects, but the thing is, there's nothing that can actually fully meet the needs, and therefore we decided to fund these projects. I don't know if Catherine, Tom, if you want to chip in a little bit for your reasoning for why you actually for the funding rounds, the pitch to start on this arduous journey of building.
From Lambeth, we have a real problem, and I think it's quite common with a backlog of validations. And so the AD, the director rather, was really kind of keen for us to find a solution. And we talked to a couple of other companies, Lambeth based, about whether or not they could help us develop some kind of online solution to resolve validations. Didn't really get very far with them, and then we were aware we were aware of the digital funding, so a round was coming up. We talked to Camden and Lewisham at that time about doing a joint bid, and then we were already working with Open Systems Lab on the PlanX, the pre-app tool that they've been developing. And they were talking about doing they've been talking with Southwark and Bucks about a similar, bid. So we just join forces and, be one big force to bid. And that's how we came into the kind of the project, as it were.
Brilliant, thank you.
We've got another couple of questions coming up, guys, if you can take a couple more. Nick Boddington's raised a question. Nick, are you able to put your mic on? Are you there?
Yeah, hi there, can you hear me?
Yes, lovely, thank you.
Yeah, just looking at some of the data in the RIPA demo you gave, it's obviously reliant on other systems in there. So, for example, I noticed on there it was drawing up information from conservation areas, listed buildings, Article 4s. So is this reliant on that local authority having a suitable system of digital data for those peripheral systems, should we call them?
Catherine, do you want
yeah, I'm just going to quickly say, to an extent, although it can be caveated, but actually, Rich, you're better at explaining the technical. So do you want to jump in there, maybe?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the short answer is yes. We need to lay the foundation work, and that's obviously a big part of our project, is working out what we need in place. Now, most authorities we've found have a lot of GIS data sets, but they may be sitting on one particular system. They're not published as open data, and they're not being used across wider systems. So actually, for a lot of the councils, for us to try and get even the partners up and running with our private beta, we need to do some work to do that. But what we're not doing is sort of creating new digital data sets in most cases. Like, they already exist, it's just we don't use them very well. And it's that problem of kind of siloing information across different services. So we're looking at making sure that we've got kind of consistent data sets, that they are published in an open format, and that also obviously has lots of other additional benefits too, because it drives innovation outside of the council. It means other people can go and tap into those as well, and that's one benefit of us working in the open, is we're kind of constantly providing tools to other public sector, third sector, and private sector organisations. So it is something that sort of, we obviously need to get the architecture right, but it's more about organising existing architecture.
I think also as well, I was chatting to Alistair, who's from Open Systems Lab, our developer, yesterday. We've been doing some work at Lambeth just to pick up on the question about conditions and Article 4s. I mean, Lambeth, our Article 4s we can digitise, but there are issues, and this is kind of probably going to be nationwide, with the sort of like trying to find conditions and seeing whether there are patterns. One way we're thinking about trying to identify where there might be a condition on a property is to see if there are patterns behind those conditions. But at the moment, I mean, in the long-term future, what the ideal would be is someone in each authority goes through and digitizes all of those historic conditions. But for the time being, the way we're going to manage it is with caveats on the system, because there's no way around it at this stage.
Thank you, guys. We've got a couple more questions. I know we're just about to run out of time. There's two more in the chat panel if you don't mind taking them. Jennifer, can you switch your mic on and ask your question? You've got a question about rules-based approach to planning systems.
Yeah, hi. So my question is more about sort of the basis for some of this rather than the actual technology. Like, I fully agree that we need to move to digital, and I'm to be honest, I'm interested in finding out a bit more about some of the projects, because I teach third-year planners development management, so it would be interesting from that perspective. But the broader there was a suggestion during the presentation that we need a rules-based approach to policies, essentially so that we can create those data categories and basically make it so that this stuff can fit through a flow of a system. But surely that depends on what the purpose of planning is. Is the purpose of planning to purely prioritise efficiency, or is it to create places that people will actually live in? So the concern there for me was kind of moving to a rules-based approach. Are we doing that just to fit in with technology, or basically, are we doing that to just fit in with technology? I work in human-computer interaction and urban planning. Technology should be there to support the system, not the system changing to fit with technology.
Can I come in on that? Is that okay? You're absolutely right, and I think that's that's a fundamental concern, and it kind of relates to another. I see Maxine Brown's posted a question as well, which sort of follows on from that. So yes, you're right, and I think what we are careful to do is to not just kind of shoehorn this in so that we can digitize it for the sake of digitizing it. I think there are a lot of problems with planning in that what you find with a lot of people is that it's if you just leave it all down to the judgment of the planner, and that can reduce transparency of the system. If you can show me a range of design policies across councils which vary significantly, I'll give you a large reward for it, because they're basically all restating the same thing, but in very generic language, sort of very wishy-washy, and it's a way of hedging our bets, and I get that. It's like a value is that you look at a case, everything on a case-by-case basis. It's a matter of fact and degree in planning, and we love that term, and we're kind of planning's a defender of that term. But there is a place to try and remove some of that uncertainty, because it allows developers, it allows planners, and it allows consistency in decision making to actually have some foresight into the outcome of planning. So whilst we won't get rid of it, and there are clear policies and there are documents that we've not been able to break down into bits of data, and we accept that, there are lots of areas where we can improve this hugely. You look at things like and stuff, you can apply for general formulas to that. It doesn't mean you can't then have a negotiation and a discussion about it. But the point is that initial assessment is effectively rules based, but people are applying that. Well, actually, you can take that out and then leave the planners. And this is where RPA, kind of process automation comes in, is that you can take those basic kind of clerical tasks or the bits where we're not adding value, particularly as planners. We're not really assessing things on that merits-based argument. Give that to a computer, streamline it, make sure that happens, which means that all the judgment and all the negotiation can be concentrated on extracting the best possible scheme and the best social economic value out of a scheme. So it's more around just kind of improving it and refocusing where planners' skill sets lie.
Can I just add to that? I think that's a really, really nice point, actually. I mean, the goal with the reducing invalid planning applications, just to highlight, is not to throw a load of data at a computer and have it churn out decisions. We really believe that digital innovation is all about finding new ways for technology to work alongside individuals in the planning system. And so it really is kind of finding those new ways of engagement rather than handing everything off to a computer system and letting that do all the work.
Completely agree. Well said, guys. We've got one last question. I know we're running over and starting on the hour, so I'll make this very quick. Glenn Conroy, do you want to ask your question quickly about support models?
Yes, I will do. I've been working with Barnsley Council with Egle as well on the income management system project, so quick plug for that. And something we've been grappling is the governance and support models going forward of the application itself. So have you guys given any consideration as to how the software itself was going to be managed, maintained going forward? Obviously, any rules are changing or any legislation coming in, how that will then be catered for and reacted to in the software.
Catherine, Tom, do you want to pitch in?
I was going to say you, but yeah, we have. I mean, there have been a variety of ideas that have come up. I mean, one of them could be, there could be a third-party, not-for-profit company set up to kind of it with funding from councils, or councils could form a kind of a consortium, as it were, to kind of co-run it together. I mean, there are lots of different models that we're considering. I don't think anything's sort of been decided on. I don't know if you want to add to that, Egle or Tom?
Yeah, so in a nutshell, we are considering several ways of how the service can be delivered, including the support models for those. We are currently focusing on private beta, so obviously we want to just as quickly as possible put it in front of users, see how they're responding to it, and then decide what the future delivery model as well as the support model might look like. So we are working towards that very small scale project. in private beta. And for that bit, the way it's going to work, it is like the RIPA side is being built on the PlanX platform. So the support model will come from OSL. And with the BOPS project, it is being managed by the delivery partner called Unboxed. But we are looking at what it's going to look like for the private beta and the longer term. It will all be published on the websites going forward. And obviously, Glenn, I'm more than welcome to talk to you or Richard, from the IMS projects as well about what's being considered for these two projects. But yeah, in a nutshell, we are currently looking at, what's going to happen next, and then we'll talk about, what's going to happen long term.
That's lovely. Thank you, Egle. I'm afraid we are going to have to wrap it up here. Thank you so much for everyone coming and presenting this morning. It's been a really interesting session. Lots of great questions. If you'd like to carry on with your questions, don't forget all the social media tags are in the chat. You can follow us on Futurefest and get back to people that way too. And we've also got the Centre Stage event on Wednesday for more networking if you're available for that. I know there are other sessions starting soon, so I'll just say another massive thank you to everybody. And I hope you enjoyed the session. Thank you and take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you.